Aldo, thanks a lot for joining us on Newsnight this evening. But I think that the big question and the bone of contention right now is looking at the BLF, right? Do they have a convincing majority, or really when it comes to stakeholders? And number two is looking at the ability for them to capacitate, because they've been quite clear about their constituents, and those are black people who are supposed to be members of that political party.
And that's actually a bone of contention, the issue that they're saying that they will not allow any white people to take up membership of the party. And that's the reason why the Freedom Front Plus is contesting this. They've launched a complaint with the Electoral Commission as well as with the Electoral Court. But we know that after there was technical issues that have been raised, they withdrew that court case. But the complaint is still there, and they said they've launched an appeal as well after the IEC decided that the BLF will remain on the ballot paper. And it's quite interesting speaking about the constituency, and I was telling someone earlier on that when you look at the number of people who are registered to vote, just over I think about 21 million, and it's not the entire 21 million that would go out to vote on election day on May 8. All the party actually needs, or any other party needs, to get some representation in Parliament would be at least about 50 to 45,000 of the votes. And
would they have those 45 to 50,000?
Well, they are confident that they will have those votes. But what's interesting as well is that they're not. What they're doing is that they're not overselling themselves. And what I mean by this is that if you look at the number of people that they had in front of the podium who then stood up and took what they call the Sankara oath, an oath of how they will behave as party members represented in Parliament, you only have, I think, more or less about 20 people who are there, whereas when you compare that to the ANC, for instance, you have hundreds of people who are on the list. They know that they won't get that large of a majority, but they are confident that they will have some sort of representation in Parliament.
Let's talk a little bit about the election manifesto. I mean, obviously the big one is the issue around land. They will completely hop on the fact that they were the ones who were propagating the issue around land. We need to have black people who've got the ownership of land, and also looking at addressing some of those injustices of the past. Take us through some of those.
The PAC may make the same argument that we have been.
Exactly. They would definitely come on board. Look, I mean, I remember Andy Ngilitama was speaking about how he was the person, and all the other political parties have failed in being able to effectively address the issues around land, issues of addressing the injustices of the past, and how black people should have a foothold when it comes to economic participation, as well as the ability to actually make decisions around autonomy as black people.
Yes, and quite interesting that you mentioned this issue around political parties, and how Mkhitam is arguing that they have been the ones that have been pushing for this issue around land. Of course, taking into consideration that Andile Mkhitam was previously with the EFF, and when the EFF came into the 5th Parliament, they made this a rallying call that there should be an amendment to the Constitution. Remember, during the first sitting of Parliament, there was an offer that was made to the ANC that we will give you our 6% if you want to amend Section 25 of the Constitution. Andile Mkhitam is now saying that both the ANC as well as the EFF have not gone far enough to ensure that the land is expropriated without compensation. And hence you have this issue around the land legislation being deferred back to the 6th Parliament, because it's only the 6th Parliament after May the 8th that will be able to amend Section 25 of the Constitution. And they're saying that these people have sold you out. Rather vote for BLF. And the issue around land is, of course, central to their messaging as well. There was a huge billboard next to the Orlando Stadium, the Orlando Library, which is next to the Orlando Hall, where they were having their manifesto launch, or what they call the battle plan. And that billboard read, "Land or death." The type of language that the party is using, quite militant, and they're saying that they are sticking by that. And just looking at some of the reaction on Twitter,
but is it resonating with the electorate? Because it's an issue around land here, and it's an issue around. It almost appears that South Africa is at a political climate where voters or potential voters that now want the economic participation aspect and element of South Africans to be open for all, and for those who were not benefiting before to actually start benefiting. So to have such militant slogans and being thrown thrown around. Is the electorate actually open to receiving that? Because at the end of the day, you and I can sit and analyze it, but ultimately it's the masses that are going to go out and vote and choose which particular party they're voting for.
Well, if you judge on social media, and as we've always argued that social media is not a representation of South Africa's electorate or even of South Africa's population whatsoever. But there are some who are saying on social media, at least, that actually this party could be speaking to me. There are some who are saying that this party shouldn't be allowed to be contesting the elections, and that's the reason why they're tagging the IEC, that you can't allow this party to be on the ballot paper. They're making similar arguments that have been made by the Freedom Front Plus. But whether indeed the party has enough support or the message resonates enough with the electorate is something that can only be tested on the 8th of May. After those results come out and the IEC makes the declaration of here are the results. I think right now it would be a bit early, but if you compare, for instance, people resonating with the EFF and the messaging of the EFF.
That's a very good question.
People had also argued before that the EFF's messaging is too militant back in 2013.
Does that not make it similar, though,
back in 2014, yeah?
Yeah, but does it not make it similar? In other words, if I have to take the economic freedom fighters, right, and then label them against the BLF, they're almost saying the same thing. Just one may say that it was one disgruntled individual from the EFF who went on and started their own political party, was really lamenting the very same strategy of the EFF. So what separates them and makes them so unique that the EFF will stand for this and the BLF stands for this?
And that's the issue. Now you even have a land party, which is a breakaway from the EFF. Some of the people who have been with the EFF who also feel that the EFF has not gone far enough with this issue around the land debate. But what sets the BLF apart from the EFF is one person, the support for Jacob Zuma. Andile Mngxitama went on the podium, spoke about this meeting that they had with the former president of the ANC, and also said that
in the African National Congress, right?
and said that the ANC, the former ANC president has endorsed his campaign. They even quoted the former president. We haven't heard anything from the former president whether he's countering this, or even from the ANC side whether they are countering this idea that the president or the former president of the ANC is supporting this organization. But quite interesting as well, Faith, is when Andile Mngxitama was going through their battle plan, which is their manifesto, he also mentioned that there are two political organizations that have now joined Land First, Black First, and one of those organizations is Maibuye African Congress. If you remember, after Jacob Zuma was recalled as president of the country, there was this organization that was started in KZN, and it was started on the basis that they were angry with how the ANC had treated Jacob Zuma. So it was seen as a pro-Jacob Zuma party, and now that party has joined the BLF. And also taking into consideration that meeting that took place with the former president. So some may argue that there are some corroborating elements on whether the former president does support the BLF or not.
Yeah, but then on the other side of it, the former president supporting another political party whilst it's during election year, while campaigning for the political party that he actually belongs to, sends mixed signals. And for Andile to be riding on that coat wave, it says something about the ability to lead. We have to leave our conversation there. But thanks for giving us insight in terms of that issue around the BLF, Black First, Land First, launching their manifesto. And of course, you get to decide as constituents in terms of exactly who are you going to vote for them come May 8th.